Welcome once again, people, to AGIT Codeworks, and this is an Oracle SQL Masterclass. And today we're going to be diving into what exactly SQL is, after which we are going to be going into the practicals. All right, so let's get this. So, introduction to SQL. So, first thing it behooves us to understand is what SQL is. So, before we dive into what SQL is, let's look at the objectives of this training. After we discuss what SQL is, we are going to go ahead to discuss the various types of SQL statements, because SQL statements are basically grouped into categories depending on what you are trying to achieve with the database. Okay, we are going to be exploring what we call the HR schema. The HR schema basically is a sample database composed of human resource tables, which basically gives us a clear understanding of what a regular database looks like, and also gives us a practical environment to go through simulated and also real-life data. Okay, demonstrating the Oracle SELECT statement, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to do the practicals, and we're also going to go through some theories surrounding SQL. So what SQL is, first of all? So SQL is a standardized programming language used to manage relational database management systems and also perform various data operations. Now, let me say it this way. Previously, companies needed to store files and data in file cabinets. Now let's look at a huge organization. That would mean a lot of records. Okay, so but nowadays it's a lot easier because these databases can be stored in electronic systems and can even be retrieved over a network that spans a wide geographical area, in the sense that we could have a database in one part of the world and a client PC in another part of the world. The data could still be retrieved. Now, the first challenge is that Oracle stores data in Oracle proprietary format. So database in electronic systems are stored in a format regular human beings cannot read. Okay, all right. So let's look at SQL as something I like to call the database whisperer. Okay, if you wanted to understand what, for example, dogs were saying, you would need a dog whisperer, right? So here we have this complex set of records, billions or sometimes millions, depending on the size of the organization or database of records of data. Okay, now what SQL basically does for us is to help us trigger information control, select records, view records, modify records, set up various record structures. Okay, so basically all we need is to push SQL into the database. This is called a query, then it gives us back a response. Okay, so SQL is basically a standardized programming language for managing relational databases and perform various data operations. All right, so now types of SQL. Okay, first of all, let's look at the various types of SQL statements. SQL is divided into number one, DML statements. DML, by the way, means data manipulation language. DDL, which means data definition language. DCL, which means data control language, and then transaction control. So any SQL statement you are writing would belong to one of these categories. Of course, in this particular class, we are going to be looking at the select statement in a more in-depth methodology. Okay, we're going to go in-depth and look at the select statement, but we're going to look at an overview now of the various types of SQL statement. Let's start with DML. Now, DML statements, they basically retrieve data from the database, enter new rows, change existing rows, or remove unwanted rows. So what you will understand about DML here is that DML right here focuses on manipulating the data, hence the name data manipulation language. Okay, so if you logged into your Facebook and you edited your Facebook profile, that means a new record has been updated on Facebook database, and that's what you will end up calling an update statement. Okay, let's say you created a new profile, that means new record is inserted in the social media platforms database. That would be an insert SQL statement. Okay, if you are viewing records, going through your profile, viewing information, a select statement would be occurring. So it's for selecting data and presenting it in a format you want to visualize it. Okay, now if you were removing records from the database, that would be a delete statement. Okay, so now a merge is an SQL statement that would handle insert, update, and delete. Okay, in a single transaction without needing to write multiple SQL statements. So that's for DML. Now let's go right down to DDL, data definition language. So what's data definition language? So I'll give you a definition first of all. So DDL is used for removing, adding, or altering data structures in an Oracle database. Now what do I mean by data structures? Now remember, the Oracle database stores data in rows and columns, which are called tables, right? So let's say this is a table containing some records, right? Rows and columns. We'll get to the details later. Okay, this table is the data structure. It's a structure. Example, this could be our employees table. It's a data structure. Okay, creating the data structure, altering it, dropping it or removing it, all right, or renaming it is DDL. So the data structure, the SQL statement, that focuses on the data structure, not the data, not manipulating the data in database, that would be DML. So DDL basically modifies this structure. So if I create a new table, that's a create statement. I assign the columns and how much memory they will use and stuff like that. I'm engaging in data definition language. If later on I alter that table to add new columns or to drop existing columns, that would be alter. Okay, if I wanted to remove the table from the database, that would be a drop. Remember, the object that holds this record, they are called tables in an Oracle database. Okay, if I rename it, the structure, that's the rename. If I do a truncate, what a truncate basically does is simple. Now let me explain this. What you do when you truncate, it looks a lot like delete, but they are different. Of course, we are still going to look at this as individual topics. Now what the truncate statement basically does is to reset the database table to what it looked like when it was created. That would mean clearing every single record in the database and leaving the structure intact. Okay, and comment is also a data definition language. We add comments to these data structures. Okay, so now that's for data definition language: create, alter, drop, rename, truncate, or comment. Okay, now the next one is what we call the data control language. Okay, data control language. Now there are basically just two types of data control language. That's a grant statement or a revoke statement. Now what does this have to do with our database? Now DCL or data control language by definition provides access or removes access from a particular database structure. What does that mean? So when you are dealing with security, securing your database, access control, you'll be dealing with data control language. What do I mean by that? I could grant a user access to this table. I could say, hey, Mr. A, for example, Mr. John, you can select from this table, but you will not be able to, let's say, alter the table. That would be a grant and a revoke statement. So I'm granting you the select privilege. I'm granting you the select privilege on this table, but I'm revoking your ability to either alter it, okay, or I could even say you cannot update, but you can delete. So this SQL language or set of SQL statements used for adding this particular access or removing this access is data control language. Okay, take note of that. So by the way, when you grant, you add access. When you revoke, you remove access. That's a no-brainer. Grant and revoke. We're still going to dive into all this as individual topics. Okay, all right. Then we have transaction control. So what does transaction control mean? Of course, I'll give you a definition first, then an explanation. So transaction control manages the status of transactions. Okay, the status of transactions in our Oracle database. So it has three statements under it. We have commit, we have rollback, and we have save point. Okay, basically commit makes a change permanent. Commits a change. Okay, while rollback undoes an unwanted change. For example, I load a script into my Oracle database that contains 5,000 users. So I get their record from an Excel sheet, for example. I get their record from an Excel sheet. Let's call this my Excel sheet. And I load the data into my Oracle server in a table. Okay. So later on, I discover that this change was not supposed to occur. So basically what a rollback does is to revert these changes back. So a rollback will reverse these changes, okay, while a commit would make these changes permanent. Okay. All right. Now that we've understood the various types of SQL statements, let's look at what we call the HR schema. Okay. If you've not yet set up your HR schema, there will be a link in the description that walks you through how to set up an Oracle database, okay, with the HR schema and create your connection using SQL Developer or any other third-party software that connects to an Oracle database. So back to what we have here on this screen, we have the HR schema. Now, what is this? What we are looking at right here is what most people would call a database model. Okay, a database model. Look at it much more like an architect who first of all designs a building, puts down the blueprints and where everything is supposed to be and what it does. Some database models are a lot more complex than this, okay? But this is the database schema, the database model for our what we call the HR schema. It's a template database schema designed in Oracle, okay, that enables us have a real-life environment for practicing how to manipulate data, how to use all these various kinds of statements we've explained here. Okay, so we're going to be practicing it on this data we are looking at here. So this basically means that, looking at this blueprint here, this basically means that we have an employees table, a department table, locations table, countries table, regions table, jobs table, and a job history table. One reason why a lot of organizations like to keep a database model or a schematic diagram like this of their Oracle database. Let's say I'm working on a database project and then I resign from the organization and they hand that database over to a new database administrator. It would be a lot easier if the database administrator is presented with a database model like this. Basically, looking at this, a database administrator could interpret this. Even these lines here have relational meanings, which we are going to talk about later when we talk about foreign keys and primary keys. So, but this is basically our tables: department table, locations, employees, job history. Okay, the employees table, number one, we're exploring the HR schema, don't forget, holds information about our employees and the employees in the organization. So these are the fields or columns in the table. Okay, these are the fields or columns in the table. So employee ID would be a unique number, okay, will be a unique number identifying the various employees. The first name, it's a no-brainer, that would be their first names, their last names, their email addresses. These are called fields. In database terminology, the entity, the table can be called an entity. The columns can be called fields. Take note of that, okay, for the sake of terminology, okay. These are their phone numbers. This is the date they were hired. That's their hire date. The job ID is an ID representing the job the staff does. So your job ID could be SA rep, which makes you a sales representative, or an IT programmer, which will be all recorded in the job ID column. Then the salary they earn, their monthly salary, is stored here in the salary column. Commission underscore PCT will hold information about whether a particular employee who earns a commission or not. So when your commission underscore PCT is empty, it means this staff does not earn a commission. If it contains a record, then you earn a commission. Then the manager ID, that's the ID of your manager. Okay, to throw more light on this, manager ID will be the employee number of the guy managing a particular staff. Then department ID will be the department number of a particular employee, okay, which is recorded here. The department ID is the ID of. So here we have the departments table, which is the ID of each department. Okay, so the ID of each department, then the name of department, for example, marketing, logistics, IT department, security, and so on and so forth. The manager ID here also would be the employee managing this department. Location ID would be the location to which this department belongs. Okay, so basically we'll be shuttling between the employees table and the departments table from time to time, but as we move further down the course, we are going to start exploring locations table, countries, regions, jobs, job history, etc, etc. Okay, so locations would contain street address, postal code, city, state, province, country ID, as the case may be. Okay, countries, same, will contain the country name and the region ID. This is the region to which the countries belong. That means we could have Asia as a region, Africa as a region, and so on and so forth. This is basically what the model of an actual company's HR schema would look like. Now, job history records when a company, a particular employee starts or stops a particular job role. Okay, that's your job history. So, and all that. This is what the HR schema looks like. So now let's dive straight into the practical and start exploring how to select these records. Alright, what I have here is I've just fired up my Navicat. You could use any other third-party app like SQL Developer. SQL Developer is the standard one used for the course. SQL Developer is a third-party application developed by Oracle that could connect to your database and then write SQL statements to retrieve data, modify data, and so on and so forth, as the case may be. So here I have Navicat. So I open up so under here I have HR. Okay, so you notice these are the database tables I mentioned in the previous slide. Okay, so these are database tables, employees being one of them. So for us to fire up a simple SQL select statement, we can say new query here and then open up a query box here. Okay, so I could say select, just make this a little bigger. So select asterisk from employees. Please, if you do not have an environment set up, there will be a link in the description to a video where we set up the Oracle environment, where we set up the database and even set up this HR schema. And also, please don't forget, you must not use Navicat. Okay, there are a lot of applications that you can use to connect to your Oracle database. SQL Developer, Navicat is one of them, and so on and so forth. You can even connect via your command line, okay, using SQL Star Plus. More on that later. What we're focusing on today is the select statement. So if I run this, I can hit the run button here, and bam, here we have our records. So these are some of our employees' records. These are employee ID, the first name, the last name, the email, just like we saw in the HR schema, in the model I displayed and explained in the last slide. So this is some record of our employees. We have 100 and something of them. Okay, SQL will really make it easy to manage these records. So we could also, okay, let's see what's going on in the departments table. I could say departments. So this would be the company department. The department is the organization. Okay, the department ID, okay, is arranged serially 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on and so forth. We have the department name, sorry, not manager name, department name. That means the name of the department. Department 10 is the administration department, marketing, purchasing, HR, shipping, IT, public relations, and so on and so forth. So these are departments in our organization. Okay, the manager ID. This is the manager managing. This is the employee number of the person managing this department. Okay, and so on and so forth. If we drop down, you notice some departments do not have a manager yet, and so on and so forth. So null is used to show that a particular data is unavailable or inapplicable or not required. That's what null means. Null does not mean zero in database terminologies. Okay, so basically most of the time you can pick any other of these tables we displayed. So locations, employees, departments, and so on. So these are our locations. So these are the various locations in the organization: the street address, the postal code, the city it's in, and stuff like that. Now most of the time we are going to be focusing on our employees table. Okay, on this channel, most demonstrations I will do using Oracle would be on the employees table, okay, because that gives us enough data and enough records to learn the various dynamics of all the types of SQL statements we have looked at. Okay, that's it for select statements. Now let's look at something we call selection and selection. Okay, so now right now we are selecting our entire employees table, hence the asterisk. Okay, hence the asterisk. But sometimes you might want to just project just specific columns. This is called projection in Oracle database, where you don't want to view the entire fields. By the way, columns, this is called a column, while this is called a row. These are columns, okay, then this is a row. So each row represents one employee. So I might want to just project specific columns. Okay, it's not every time I want to see everybody's record with every information in the employees table. And mind you, some databases can be as big as 100,000 rows or whatever number of columns. So sometimes you might want to project just specific records. That would mean we could say last underscore name, okay, and then salary, which means I want to just see everybody's last name and the salaries they earn. Makes sense? Okay, let's run this. We run it, we notice I see everybody's name and their salaries. Okay, my boss might just require just this report, and the slick and good thing with Navigator is that you can very easily export to Excel and so on and so forth. And then most other database engines like SQL Developer has that feature also. Okay, I might also want to say, okay, let's also view the job ID and then the whatever, we can say first name, first underscore name. Okay, so you see, I'm viewing the last name, salary, job ID, and first name. Now, let me run by rule. Let me run through you some rules. Sorry. Now, first of all, SQL is not case sensitive. SQL is not case sensitive. What does that mean? I could say last name like this in capital letter, last underscore name, and the query will still work. So it's not case sensitive, unlike most programming languages. Like if you go into Java and a lot of other languages, you notice some case sensitivity. But SQL is not case sensitive. I could also type select. In any case I so wish, my result remains the same. Most times while you're writing SQL statements, it's good to start new constructs in a new line. Okay, for example, by explanation and by definition, the select statement takes the columns you want to extract, and then the from statement takes the table name from which you want to extract those columns. So the next concept and the last concept we'll look at for basic select statement is something we'll call column aliasing. Now, column aliasing is an optional part of an SQL statement where you want to change the default name of the column being displayed. For example, for last name I might prefer surname, so I would say AS over here, then in double quotes I would say surname. All I'm saying is, yes, the table is stored as last name, but for the sake of the report I'm creating, probably for my boss or probably for displaying on a web page, I want this column heading to be called surname. Okay, if you run this, you get surname here as the heading. I might want this. So why is this useful? Why is the AS keyword useful? Remember, it's called column aliasing. Why is it useful? Number one reason is because it helps you give more descriptive names to column headings. We'll see how that falls into use as we move on in our Oracle journey. So for example, I might also want salary to be monthly salary. Okay, which describes the salary column and also displays it as such. So I have monthly salary. Okay, and so on and so forth. So that's it for basic select statement. If you found this content useful, and for more awesome content regarding Oracle programming, coding, overall making IT really easy, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Your comments are very welcome in the comment section, and to stay updated when I post a new video, you can hit the notification bell also. That really helps. All right, until next time, do have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks for being with us.